What's up guys, Tommy Bowyer here from Move Rewind, and today I'm going to be ranking the worst Doctor Who episodes. So without further ado, let's get into it. I've done many videos in the past about what I consider the best Doctor Who episodes, as well as underrated Doctor Who stories, but I thought today, as it's coming up to Christmas, I'd do the complete opposite and highlight some of the worst episodes of Doctor Who I have ever seen. Now, a few disclaimers before we get into this video. Firstly, I'm only going to be picking episodes from the revival because I haven't seen enough of Classic Who to really give it a fair judgment, so I'm only going to be including episodes from the revival. Secondly, obviously, this video is going to contain spoilers for these episodes, so if you haven't seen a lot of Doctor Who, I would suggest watching it before you watch this video. And thirdly, I've decided to include one episode from each incarnation of the Doctor, which I consider their worst episodes, except for the 9th Doctor, portrayed by Christopher Eccleston, and the 14th Doctor, portrayed by David Tennant, because I think both of those Doctors didn't have a bad episode. I think all of Series 1, all 13 episodes with the 9th Doctor are really strong. And I also think the 60th anniversary specials with the 14th Doctor are also really strong. So I won't be including them on this list because I don't think they've got a single bad episode. The others, there's quite a few. Firstly, we have the 10th Doctor. Now, I think that the 10th Doctor's era was pretty strong. I think it was when Russell T Davies was at his peak, and David Tennant is obviously one of the most iconic incarnations of the Doctor ever. But that isn't to say that some of his episodes were pretty lackluster. But for me, the worst 10th Doctor episode, it has to be Fear Her. From Series 2, Episode 11. Fear Her really does feel like a Sarah Jane Adventures episode, but just without anything good which came from the Sarah Jane Adventures. I think that the whole plot of this episode is pretty mediocre. I think the acting, especially from the young girl, was not very good, and that really does take you out of the story. There doesn't really feel like there's much stakes in this episode, even though it's about, the idea that this girl can draw people and kind of take them out of existence, including the entire Olympic Stadium and, the whole planet. But it just doesn't feel like there's many stakes. Plus, I don't know why, but this was set, obviously, in 2012. It was 2006 when it came out. So I suppose the idea of the London 2012 Olympics, it seemed very futuristic at the time. Looking back on it now, it just feels really outdated because obviously it's been 12 years since the Olympics in London. So this episode is just one of those which I don't look back on. And rewatchability for me is a massive thing when it comes to an episode of Doctor Who. So Fear Her, the acting is subpar, and there's just no desire for me to rewatch this episode unless I'm doing a marathon of the show. Next, we have the 11th Doctor, Matt Smith. Now, there are a few episodes which I could have picked out for the 11th Doctor, but for me, it has to be Series 7, Episode 2, Dinosaurs on a Spaceship. Now, this was written by Chris Chibnall, and, if you've been watching this channel for a while, you'll know my opinions on Chris Chibnall. I do not think that he's a very good writer when it comes to Doctor Who, and Dinosaurs on a Spaceship kind of has all of his worst elements of an episode. Firstly, there is way too many side characters. Secondly, there is a countdown. Chibnall loves his countdown. And thirdly, the episode, it's just not that inventive. I mean, it is what it says. It's dinosaurs on a spaceship. That is literally it, and I just don't think it works. And the sad thing is, I can see potential. You've got David Bradley as the villain, and I think, he's a really good actor, and he does portray a good villain, but there's just not enough development done to this guy whatsoever. He's just someone who's smuggling dinosaurs. All of the side characters, including the Egyptian princess and the game hunter, they're just underdeveloped. You don't get to know these people. Plus you have drama with Amy and Rory's dad, which, once again, these are decent ideas, but it just kind of comes out of nowhere. And especially with the previous episode, Asylum of the Daleks, you had Amy and Rory, on the verge of divorce. And all of a sudden in Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, they're perfectly fine, like there was no issue whatsoever. Obviously that was due to Series 7 being more standalone than Series 6 or Series 5 was. but it just doesn't make sense to me. Dinosaurs on the Spaceship is very lackluster, and it really is Chibnall at some of his worst. Next we have the 12th Doctor, and I have to admit, I think the 12th Doctor's era is underrated. I think he has some fantastic episodes and some outstanding performances from Peter Capaldi. In my opinion, the best actor to ever portray the character. But that is to say, he does have some very weak episodes, and I was kind of umming and ahhing over which one to pick. And my obvious choice was Hellbent, because I think Hellbent is a terrible finale, which really does just squander what Heaven Sent set up. But then there's another episode from Series 9 that I think is even worse. And that is Series 9, Episode 5, The Girl Who Died. For the simple reason, this feels like a pantomime. The acting in this episode is abysmal. Not even Capaldi, with all of his talent, can make the script for this episode work. I think that the villain is laughable. This over-the-top Viking character who's a head in the clouds, I think it's just stupid. Plus, I weren't that sold on, and I can't even remember, Astrid? I think her name was Astrid, the character. And I know everyone was going mental because the actor who portrayed this character was in Game of Thrones and it was apparently a big deal. Everyone was excited about it. But I think she's pretty useless, to be honest, especially in this episode. There's nothing about her which makes her stand out compared to other characters we've seen. And the sad thing is, if you look at the 2 episodes which came before this, Under the Lake and Before the Flood, they had some great secondary characters which you really felt were developed. In this episode, they only have to develop one character and they fail at it. There is nothing about this girl which stands out, which makes me wonder why the Doctor chooses this particular character to break the laws of time and bring her back to life. It made no sense to me whatsoever. So The Girl Who Died, it's painful to watch. It just feels like a pantomime. It's not serious at all. And I'm not someone, I don't mind an episode which is more laid back, a bit more humorous than serious. But this was just over the top. The 13th Doctor's era. Now, obviously, this is Chris Chibnall's time as showrunner. So there were loads of episodes which I could have chose because I hate Chibnall's writing, and I really feel sorry for Jodie Whittaker because when she is given a decent script by someone who isn't Chris Chibnall, you can tell that she kind of has what it takes to portray the Doctor. It's just a shame that the writing took her down. But for me, the worst episode of the 13th Doctor's era is Series 11, Episode 4, Arachnids in the UK. Now, everyone always claims that Arachnids in the UK is one of the worst episodes of Doctor Who they have ever seen, and with good reason. This episode is horrible. The companions, this is their first time back on planet Earth since leaving in the opening episode. And we hardly know anything about them, even now. You know, they're just blank slates of wood. They introduce Yaz's family and nothing is done with it. They've got a character who is basically Donald Trump. And obviously this was in late 2018. So Trump had been president for, nearly 2 years. So Trump jokes were already old at that time. Rewatching this episode, they're even more outdated and they don't even do anything with it. They don't kind of highlight maybe concerns about Trump's style of politics and what it does for society. They don't really do anything with that. They just kind of say, this guy's like Donald Trump. Look how bad he is. So they don't even really let the viewer make up their minds for themselves. They just kind of enforce their ideology onto the viewer. And this is something, whereas I'm someone which Doctor Who, yes, it has always been political. I have no issue with political elements in Doctor Who. This was just a bit too on the nose for me. And as for the spiders themselves, they don't do anything with this concept. They're just giant spiders running around a hotel in Sheffield. But obviously arachnids in Sheffield isn't the same as arachnids in the UK, so the title is misleading. And the sad thing is, you can do a spider episode of Doctor Who. If films such as Eight-Legged Freaks and Arachnophobia and even Sting, which was released earlier this year, you can make a film about killer spiders work. It can be scary, and Doctor Who, an episode about killer spiders, that could really work, but they don't do anything with it. And obviously the ending of this episode, when the 13th Doctor would rather the giant spider suffocate to death than just be shot, is so unlike the Doctor. We get the Doctor is anti-gun, but there is context. She would rather have this creature have a painful and slow death rather than just end it quick. So yeah, this episode, it just doesn't understand who the Doctor is, and it really is Chris Chibnall's worst episode in my opinion. Next we have the 15th Doctor. Now Series 14, or Series 1 if you want to be really specific, I thought was decent. You know, it had some really good moments, and I loved Shooty Gatwa as the Doctor, and I loved Millie Gibson as Ruby Sunday. For me, the worst episode of Series 14 is Space Babies. And that's simply because you had the church on Ruby Road, which was something different. It felt new and old at the same time, which was a really good combination. Space Babies is a massive letdown when you compare it to the church on Ruby Road. I was never keen on the concept to begin with, the idea of babies talking with, you know, intelligence and adult voices. It's just a bit too childish for me. But this episode, I find it very cringy. You know, I think a lot of the 15th Doctor's jokes about them being not just babies, but space babies don't land very well. The idea of a monster being made from bogies and they're all petrified of the monster, but then when the monster looks like it's going to die, they're all really upset and want the Doctor to save the monster. It really doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I just think that this episode was too immature, and I understand a series premiere is a bit more light-hearted, you know, and Russell T Davies is really good at series premieres, especially in his original tenure. So this one, it was a massive letdown. It was just a bit too childish and too cringy for me. So thanks for watching, guys. I really do hope you enjoyed this video. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe in order to receive great and maybe even improved quality content in the future. Please remember to comment down below episodes which you think are not very good. I always love hearing opinions from you guys, and obviously I would say that there's only a handful of episodes of Doctor Who which are awful. You know, the majority are good, and even if they're not good, they can be guilty pleasures, they can be fun for the viewer. But I think the episodes I've picked out are ones which I just cannot enjoy at all. They're just episodes which I will not rewatch because I just can't bear to rewatch them. So anyway, I hope you're having a good day, and I will see you in another one. See ya!